I usually think about how lucky I am to have the life I've had, but following these speakers makes me think karma's coming around. I'm going to talk about work. One evening a few years ago, I had one of those moments that you live in New York for. In the morning, I cooked a really busy breakfast shifted egg. I'd gone out that afternoon and on a bunch of productive errands. In the evening, I came back to the restaurant to find some friends of mine sitting in the vestibule facing North Fifth Street in the glow of the sun reflecting on buildings across the street. I sat down with them in a bottle of wine and felt the air full of warmth and the anticipation of spring. My knees ached pleasantly, my to-do list was clear, and I was in the company of people I loved, enjoying perfect weather. End scene. Yeah. I have a really bad habit of eavesdropping on the tables around me when I go out to eat. That night I found myself tuning into the conversation of three guys sitting a couple of tables away from me. They were a few years out of college, full of swagger, drinking Garrett's beer, eating fried chicken and hamburgers. I don't know how their conversation got started, but when I tuned in, they were arguing. Two of them, it seemed, asking for the third to be a little more understanding of people who had bad breaks in life. I don't feel sorry for them, the guy said. We all made our choices. His friends put up some argument I couldn't quite hear. He said, no, I worked hard in high school so I could go to a good college. And I worked hard in college so I'd have good choices when I graduated. So that I wouldn't have to spend the rest of my life standing around somewhere flipping burgers for a living. Oh, the nerve of this guy. What an astonishing thing for him to say, sitting right there in a restaurant eating a hamburger. Here you are on a Thursday afternoon not working, I might point out. You're eating a hamburger as you use flipping burgers as shorthand for personal failure, for moral weakness. You want to go back to the kitchen and say that to the cook who just made your hamburger? The cook who, as it happened, worked hard in high school so he could go to a good college, worked hard in college so he could get a good job, and of all the choices available to him, chose to work in a kitchen making hamburgers for you? I didn't throw that guy out of the restaurant, though he's the first and only person I've ever been tempted to do that to. But as you can see, it's stuck in my craw. And it's bothered me all these years, not because it was an example of especially boorish behavior. It's the way most of us think. You have your jobs in food service, which are fine while you're working through college or waiting for your callback. And then you have your real jobs, your so-called knowledge work, your skilled labor. Flipping burgers, flipping eggs, slinging drinks. That's our cultural shorthand for going nowhere. That thinking runs deep in our culture, all the way back to this little gem you may remember from Bible school if you had a background like mine. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil will you eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow will you eat food until you return to the ground. For from dust you were made, and to dust you shall return. As you probably know, that's God cursing Adam for sin. I think if God could think of anything worse to do to Adam than to turn him into a farmer and a line cook, why shouldn't we think of this work as a curse? I spent years myself in the grips of this way of thinking. All my first jobs were in restaurants, washing dishes, bussing tables, serving people in a cafeteria out of steam pans. I knew like it was a cultural implant from the Matrix that I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. I moved to Virginia to go to grad school in literature, about as far away from working in a dish pit as I thought I could get. I lived there on my grandmother's farm, about 45 minutes east of Charlottesville, and it was a great life. I'd spend my afternoons sitting on the porch, bathed in golden afternoon sunlight, reading with my feet on the railing and a quart of iced coffee at my elbow. And as I sat there reading Dante or Derrida, a couple of our neighbors were working in the field in front of me. James Cain would be out there baling hay to set aside for his cows in the winter. Quintus Massey, a nimble 80-year-old, would come over to milk his cow that he kept in our barn, to check on the barn cats, to look for wild blackberries. I felt a little odd about working so hard on literary theory, while these guys were out there working hard to keep actual animals alive, healthy, and happy. It wasn't because they tried to make me feel weird about it. They were perfectly polite when I told them what I was doing. The truth was, I didn't believe in what I was doing. And when you don't believe in what you're doing, then your work truly is a curse. Grad school was a frustrating and alienating experience. This was what I was meant to do. I knew that. I was destined for it. I've been told that most of my life, and I was lucky to be there. Meanwhile, there are James and Quintus working in the field, doing the kind of work I was told I was lucky to escape. They were sweating to eat their food. For me, it was just a metaphor. They worked from sun up to sundown, pushing their aging bodies hard. They worked whether they felt sick or inspired. No dairy cows ever offered anyone vacation. Theirs was the very kind of work the biblical curse described, the kind of work that we as a culture have tried to direct our children away from for generations. But they seemed a whole lot happier than I felt. So I bailed on grad school and moved here. Surely in New York, I thought I'd find something that suited me. I worked in .com, so that lasted the first time around. And then I went back to literary work for a while. And finally, as a kind of Hail Mary, I threw myself back into the kitchen. All the things we're told we want in a job, autonomy, freedom, flexible hours, pleasant working conditions, I gave all that up. I had to be there every morning at 5:30. I had to work the whole shift, nonstop, whether I felt like it or not. It was hot. I did the same thing over and over again all day long at the beck and call of a server who could make me jump by hanging a slip of paper in front of me. And for the first time in my adult life, I was happy every day to go to work. I loved working with my hands. I loved the concrete feeling of accomplishment I'd get when I'd clear a huge rail of tickets. And I loved it when customers would yell their thanks into the kitchen for something I'd worked hard to make. But I also loved the fact that I could see a direct connection between what I was doing for work and what I wanted the world to look like. The harder I worked, the more work there was for good farmers. The more food I served, the more people I knew were walking around the neighborhood with good food in their stomachs. So why did it take me so long to figure this out? Why didn't I just know right out of the gate that I wanted to work with food and run with it? The voices that tell us we should be aiming higher never let up. We're all singing the same song here, more or less. We want to bring better food to more people. We want the world to survive and thrive for our lifetime, for our generations to come. We want to be healthy. We want to buoy everyone up so that we all have a seat at the table when we serve the giant salads from our rooftop farms at dinner. But there's a line that gets left out of this song all too often. Someone's serving that food, and cooking it, and growing it, and they're not always sitting down with us to eat. I want to talk about inverting the way our culture thinks about the work we do to put food on our tables. I want us to talk about how we can rethink food work, rethink food workers, and rethink the kinds of jobs we make. The idea that food jobs are a dead end is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you run a restaurant and you think of your employees as disposable, why would you invest anything in keeping them around? If you don't invest anything in keeping them around, why would they stay? If they don't feel like they're part of something important working for you, why wouldn't they take the first better thing to come down the pipe? And that's the crushing thing about the way we neglect food work. People who work in food are part of something important. Every major corporation in America spends millions of dollars trying to persuade us and its employees that the work they do is important. We who work in food don't have to try that hard. We feed people. We tend the soil. Food touches on everything, the environment, health, social justice, the economy, and yet we treat people who work in food like washouts from life. They should feel like doctors or aid workers. They should have a palpable sense that what they're doing matters, that the people they're working with and for are with them in a mighty effort to make the world better through direct action. There's something like 13 million people in this country working for food. That's a lot of people whose lives and talents we're wasting, and we don't give them a chance to belong to something important. I don't need to tell anyone here, I hope, that working for food is not a curse, and it's not a dead-end job. I'd love to go find that guy who made me so angry and see if he still has his job selling condos or bear bags or whatever he's doing. Though he made his burger and is still happy cooking. But everywhere we turn, our culture tells us it's the cook whose job is menial, that the jobs of all the line cooks and dishwashers and servers in this country are of no account. We avert our eyes from them. When we stop looking at the people who do that work, we stop caring about them. And when we stop caring about these people, we get what we deserve. Monsanto running our farms and Herman Cain running our restaurants. We're gathered together here over the next 2 days to brainstorm, to think about food, to meet people we can work with, so that when we go back out to our jobs next week, we have a whole new group of people to draw on, a whole bunch of contacts to help us develop new ideas. With any luck, some new businesses will be born here this weekend. The challenge I'd like to put to you is this. When you start thinking about the next amazing thing you can do with the kinds of jobs you're going to make, put cultivating the lives and the passions of the people you work with at the core of what you do. Remind yourself, remind the people you work with, that the work you're doing is important, whether you're a prep cook or a food policy analyst. That's what makes the food movement sustainable. The belief, the passion, the lives of the people who do this work, who serve all of us by devoting themselves to it, who see their hard work not as a blessing, not as a curse. We have to learn to honor that work and nourish that passion, whether we find it at Blue Hill or White Castle, because that's a resource we can renew forever, and in renewing it, we will renew ourselves. Thanks, have a great time.
Have shown an extreme, incredible amount of respect for our speakers today.